So you want to try macOS, but you don't want to spend money on a machine you don't know you like? Enter Hackintosh, installing macOS on your own PC. Let's get into it after the intro.
It's the Anarchy with me on the Exciting Guy!
The current version of macOS, Tahoe, will be the last to actually support the x86 processor architecture. With Apple having moved on to their own silicon chips, the era of running macOS on any x86 computer is coming to an end. Tahoe will still get some support for a while though, and running it on a PC will give you the opportunity to see if the macOS operating system is right for you. Now, to be fair, I personally do not have any prior experience in getting macOS to run on a PC. So for today's topic, I've been searching the web and tried to find a relatively simple solution that you can try for yourself without too much of a hassle. I found that most people today recommend using Proxmox to run macOS. What? macOS in a virtual machine? But I want to use my physical machine to run it! Don't worry, we will. I'm running macOS on my red race car machine right now, and it's working really well. I first tried it on this Ryzen 3 Mini, but I couldn't get hardware sharing to work properly on that one. Then I moved to this Intel N100 Mini, which worked, but I didn't get a display on HDMI when I share the iGPU with my macOS VM. So maybe this doesn't work well on an iGPU? Not sure. When I moved over to my race car PC, things got a lot easier. This PC has an Intel i5 8500 CPU, 16 gigs of RAM, and has an AMD RX 5700 XT GPU. I installed Proxmox, got macOS installed in the VM, connected the GPU and USB controller to the VM, and boom! It's working as if directly on hardware. Sure, the added Proxmox layer gives us some overhead, especially since we can't use all of our memory from macOS, but it's way easier to get running this way. Let's first see how my machine does. I'll show you how I did it afterwards. So my PC now identifies as an iMac Pro from 2017, with the aforementioned RX 5700 XT GPU and a little over 12 gigs of RAM. That's basically the overhead from running on Proxmox. Some of my 16 gigs of RAM is going to that. I don't have a very large drive, but that's by choice. You can use a bigger one if you wish. Here we see it identifies as an iMac Pro 1,1, which does not exist with an i5 and a 4K display. When we open the applications thingy, we see that it needs some time to show all of the icons. To be fair, it does this on my M2 MacBook as well, albeit a tad faster. Not sure if it would be quicker without the Proxmox layer. We can use it to simply browse the web with Safari or any other browser of your liking. Opening a video is perfectly fine. Magnets are bad for hardware again? Damn, I made a video on the subject about a year ago. I guess I need to read up. Let's install DaVinci Resolve to see if it will edit a video. It's in the App Store. Oh yeah, no, I'm not logging in right now. I think you could though. Let's download it from their website. And install. There we are. Let's get some footage from a network share. Doing pretty decent in the preview window, directly from a network drive. Let's make a cut. Place it here. Yeah, no issues there. Rendering is slow, but that could have something to do with not using a license and thus not being able to utilize the GPU to render. According to speed test, I should be able to edit 4K footage on this. Not bad. Gaming might be a bit of an issue, as there's just not that many games that have a macOS build. Scrolling through my Steam library, there's only a handful of games that are actually installable. And a lot of those come with a 32-bit warning, as Apple has removed 32-bit support some versions of macOS before. Euro Truck Simulator 2 seems available though. That's an interesting loading screen I haven't seen before. It needs keystrokes. Yeah, seems plausible for a game. Yeah, baby! 4K gaming on a Hackintosh! Sorry. So how did I do this? You know what? Let's just completely reinstall so I can show it to you. First, simply install Proxmox. I have it on a Ventor drive. You can write it directly to a stick, whatever floats your boat. Just a simple next finish install. With that done, open the Proxmox web interface from another machine and log in using the credentials you chose during installation. Click on the host and repositories under updates, disable the enterprise repositories, and add the no subscription repository. Now just update Proxmox. Next we'll open a browser tab to lucid-fabrics.github.io/osx-proxmox-next. Just copy the install command right here. Head back to Proxmox, click shell and simply paste that command in there. This will set up all important stuff for a macOS VM. Yes, it shows us we need to set up an option to keep macOS from crashing in a VM. Just copy the supplied command and run it. And reboot the machine to activate it. Now we can run the OSX next command to try again. Good to go! Nice! Know that it says IOMMU enabled. Without it, you won't be able to link your hardware to the VM. To enable that on my board, I had to go into the overclock settings in my system's BIOS to enable VTD on the CPU features. That's not always in the same spot and isn't even always called the same, so this might be very different on yours. Anyway, now we can click continue. Choose a macOS version. I'll just pick the latest. Storage location. There's only one on a fresh install of Proxmox. And wait for it to download some stuff. Now click the dry apply button to test the settings. And when it's done, click install and install again and wait for it to finish. Now when we open the VM's console, we see it shows the macOS installer icon. Click it and wait for it to boot. First open disk utility because our shiny new hard drive isn't partitioned yet and the macOS installer is too stupid to handle that for you. Click the drive, click erase, give it a name of your liking and make sure it's getting formatted as APFS with a GUID partition map. Close that and click reinstall macOS. Does it hang? That's a first. It's not that busy, so let's shut it down and restart. There we are again. Let's retry that. Yeah, that's what I expected the first time. Of course I agree with the license terms. Choose our drive, which is the only available one anyway. And wait. This won't take 3 hours for real, but it does take a while for sure. It will reboot a few times, during which you'll have to manually choose the hard disk instead of the installer to continue the installation. So here I wasn't paying attention and it automatically booted into the recovery image again. Just reboot and choose the hard disk to move on. There we are. So at this point macOS is basically installed, but still extremely slow. Just something we'll have to pull through, I guess. The update step is where I was done waiting. I have waited for this for over 3 hours on a mini PC when I decided to simply shut it down and restart. That did the trick and does seem to do it each time. And we're in macOS. Let's make sure it automatically boots into macOS instead of the installer. The command that was shown during the creation of the VM doesn't work for me. Not only should you quote the boot order, so the semicolon doesn't get interpreted by our shell, but even then, the recovery image kept being selected as the first boot option. So instead, I'm going to detach the 2.5 GB drive that has the recovery image on it. There we are. So now it will just boot into macOS after the timeout, which will be handy when we're going to output through the physical GPU, because we won't be able to see it. Right, shut it down again. Let's give it some more memory. I've got 16 gigs in here and Proxmox doesn't need half of it. Now click Add, choose PCI device, raw device and select your GPU. Make sure to tick all boxes here. Now that we have a physical graphics card, we can remove the virtual one by setting it to None. Let's add another PCI device, in my case my USB controller, so I can control the VM using the keyboard and mouse that are connected to the machine itself. Tick all but the primary GPU box for reasons I shouldn't have to explain. Let's start a VM again and move over to the HDMI output. This is where I realized I forgot an important step. It's normal not to have any video output right after starting the VM, but it didn't come on later either. The GPU was in use by the AMD GPU driver on Proxmox. So we'll blacklist that by creating a file in etc.modprobe.d and... What system comes without Vim installed? As I said, create a file in etc.modprobe.d with a line blacklist AMD GPU. That is, if you're using a relatively modern AMD GPU. Otherwise you might need to blacklist another driver. Run update disk grub and reboot the host. Up and running again. Let's try booting the VM. Open the HDMI output, which is still showing Proxmox for now, and it's gone. And now we're seeing macOS on our screen. It's kinda usable like this, but I found performance to get a lot better with a decent QEMU-agent installed. For that, open Safari on your new Mac and head to github.com/mav2287/mac-guest-agent. Click the latest release and download the file mac-guest-agent. Now open the terminal. They tell you to move the agent into user local bin, but that path does not exist on a clean macOS install, so let's create that first. And follow the installation steps as shown on the page afterwards. Next we need to head back to Proxmox and change the agent type for the machine as shown here. While we're at it, let's set it to auto start the VM at boot. Under the VM, click Options, Start at boot and tick the box. Let's just reboot the whole machine to make sure it works. There's Proxmox, and after a while the screen goes black and a little later we see macOS booting. By the way, the reason we're not seeing anything at first is that a Mac can't work with a GPU's BIOS that's meant for a PC. The same thing happens when you put a card like this in a Mac Pro. You'll get a display as soon as the driver is loaded, which is why you can't see the boot picker as well. You might be able to work around that with a ROM file from a Mac variant of the card, not sure. Right, straight into macOS. Takes a little longer to boot as it first needs to load Proxmox, but when it's fully booted it's working rather well. Turning it off is another thing, by the way. If you shut it down from macOS like this, you're only shutting down the virtual machine, so you need to head into Proxmox to turn that off. A simple workaround is to simply hit the power button of your PC, after which Proxmox will shut down, stopping the VM as well. I'd say this is working rather well. Let me know your thoughts about it. That's all I have for you today. I hope you liked this video. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.